Sometimes a single act of kindness can destroy your entire life. Theo learned this the moment 30 armed knights surrounded his family's cottage at dawn, their swords drawn, their faces cold as winter stone. All he'd done was help a desperate girl cross the forbidden mountain pass. She was crying, terrified, begging for help. How could he have said no? But that girl wasn't just anyone. She was Princess Alara, heir to the throne, and her father, the king, had just been brutally murdered in his own chambers. Now Theo sits in a dungeon cell, accused of conspiracy to commit regicide. The evidence against him is perfect. Too perfect. Witnesses he's never met swear they saw him planning the murder. A bloody knife was found in his cottage. Even the princess herself stood before the royal court and confessed to paying him. But none of it is true, and the man orchestrating this nightmare, the one who actually murdered the king, is about to be crowned. He's powerful, methodical, and he's already made sure that anyone who questions his story disappears. Theo has 48 hours before his public execution. His 12-year-old sister is trapped inside the castle, unknowingly holding evidence that could save him or get them both killed. And the only person who believes his innocence just walked into a meeting with the real murderer, a man who's already eliminated everyone else who stood in his way. The axe is sharpened, the crowd is gathering, and the truth is buried so deep that speaking it out loud has become a death sentence. But sometimes the smallest voices carry the loudest truth. Sometimes a farm boy and a frightened girl can bring down a kingdom built on lies, if they survive long enough to try. The blade was already at his throat when Theo realized the girl he'd helped yesterday wasn't just any girl. He'd woken to the sound of horses, 30 of them, maybe more. Their hooves hammered against the frozen ground outside his family's cottage, sending vibrations through the dirt floor beneath his straw mattress. His mother gasped from across the room. His father's hand shot to the rusted sickle hanging by the door. Knuckles white, useless. Theo's heart slammed against his ribs so hard he thought it might crack bone. They didn't knock. The door exploded inward, splinters of wood scattering like shrapnel. 3 men in armor poured through the opening, their chainmail catching the weak morning light that filtered through the smoke hole in the roof. The lead knight had eyes like river stones, cold and smooth and utterly devoid of mercy. He moved with the efficiency of a man who'd done this 1,000 times before. Theo of Ashbrook. His voice was gravel scraped across iron. Theo's tongue stuck to the roof of his mouth. His younger sister, Mira, whimpered from her corner, clutching the rag doll their mother had sewn from potato sacks. She was only 12. Too young to understand what armed men at dawn meant. Too young to know that people like them didn't survive encounters with people like this. I said, "Are you Theo of Ashbrook?" The knight's hand rested on his sword hilt. Not a threat yet. A promise. Yes. The word came out strangled. Theo stood, his bare feet finding the cold floor. He wore only his sleeping tunic, threadbare and stained with yesterday's mud. He could smell his own fear, sharp and acidic. The knight's eyes traveled over him slowly, assessment clinical and thorough. What did he see? A boy of 19 winters. Broad-shouldered from years of fieldwork, but soft in all the ways that mattered. No training, no weapons, no means of resistance whatsoever. You crossed the Widow's Pass yesterday. Not a question. Theo's stomach dropped. The pass was forbidden to commoners, everyone knew that. But the girl, she'd been desperate. Crying. Her cloak had been fine wool, yes, but torn and muddy. She'd said her family's cart had overturned on the lower road, that she needed to reach the next village before nightfall. To fetch help. Her hands had been shaking. Her voice had cracked with genuine terror. How could he have said no? I was helping someone. His voice sounded pathetically small even to his own ears. Helping. The knight's lip curled. Behind him, 2 more soldiers pushed into the cottage. The space, already cramped for 4 people, became suffocating with 7 bodies and all that metal. The smell of horse sweat and leather oil filled Theo's nose. One soldier knocked over their only table. His mother's wooden bowl, the one she'd inherited from her grandmother, shattered against the floor. Nobody apologized. Do you know who you helped? The knight stepped closer. Close enough that Theo could see the old scar bisecting his left eyebrow, white against weathered skin. A girl. She didn't tell me her name. She just needed... Theo's words died as the knight's expression shifted. Something flickered behind those stone eyes. Not anger. Worse. Satisfaction. She didn't tell you her name. The knight repeated it slowly, tasting each word. Of course she didn't. He turned to his men. Bind him. What? No, I didn't do anything wrong. Theo stumbled backward, but there was nowhere to go. The cottage wall pressed against his spine. Rough hands grabbed his arms. The rope bit into his wrists, coarse fibers scraping skin. His mother lunged forward. Please, he's a good boy. He wouldn't hurt anyone. The knight didn't even look at her. The boy crossed forbidden territory with the crown princess of Valdris. Princess Alara, missing for 3 days. Presumed dead by order of the royal council. He turned back to Theo, and now there was something new in his face. Almost like pity. Almost. You're either her accomplice in treason, or the last person to see her alive. Either way, boy, you're coming with us. The world tilted. Princess. The word echoed in Theo's skull like a death knell. The girl with the muddy cloak and desperate eyes. The one who'd gripped his arm and thanked him with tears streaming down her face. The one who'd looked so heartbreakingly ordinary when she'd smiled at him before disappearing into the valley fog. Princess Alara, missing, presumed dead. I don't understand. But he did. God help him, he was starting to. The king is dead. The knight's voice dropped lower. Around them, his soldiers stiffened. Even speaking the words aloud seemed dangerous. Murdered in his chambers 4 nights ago. The princess vanished the same night. And you, farmer's boy, were the last person seen with her before she disappeared into the mountains. Theo's legs gave out. The soldiers held him upright, their grip bruising. His father made a wounded sound. Animal and raw. Mira's sobs filled the terrible silence that followed. I didn't know. Theo's voice cracked. I swear on my life, I didn't know who she was. Your life. The knight's smile was knife-thin. Yes, that's precisely what you'll be swearing on. He gestured to his men. They began, dragging Theo toward the door. Wait. His mother's scream pierced the chaos. Where are you taking him? When will he come back? The knight paused at the threshold. When he turned back, his face was almost gentle. It made him look more dangerous, not less. That depends entirely on what he tells us, and whether the princess is found alive. He paused, letting the weight of that settle. Pray she is, woman. Pray very hard. Because if Princess Alara is dead, your son dies with her. That's the law. They hauled Theo into the blinding morning light. Outside, the courtyard of his family's small farm had transformed into a military camp. Horses everywhere, their breath steaming in the cold air. Soldiers in formation. And at the center of it all, 2 figures on horseback who radiated authority so absolute that Theo felt it like a physical weight. One was a man of perhaps 40 winters, broad and bearded, with a captain's insignia on his chest. His eyes tracked Theo with cold calculation. The other made Theo's blood freeze. He was older, perhaps 50, with silver threading through dark hair. He wore no armor, only rich velvet robes in deep crimson. But it was his face that turned Theo's stomach to ice, because he'd seen that face before, on coins, on the wanted posters in the village square. Lord Edmund, the king's younger brother, the man who, if Princess Alara was truly dead, would inherit the throne. Lord Edmund's eyes locked onto Theo's, and he smiled. So this is the boy. His voice was silk over steel. The humble peasant who just happened to help the princess on the very night her father was murdered. What extraordinary timing. He leaned forward in his saddle. Tell me, boy, did she pay you well for your assistance? The journey to the capital took 3 days, and every hour of it felt like dying slowly. They'd bound Theo's hands behind his back and thrown him onto a supply wagon like a sack of grain. The rope cut deeper with each jolt of the wheels over uneven ground. His shoulders screamed. By the second day, he couldn't feel his fingers anymore, just a distant tingling that might have been his imagination, or might have been his body giving up. Nobody spoke to him. The soldiers rode in formation around the wagon, their faces forward, expressions blank. Theo tried once to explain, to tell them about the girl with the torn cloak, how she'd begged him for help. The nearest guard had simply turned his head away, as if Theo had already stopped existing. That was when the real fear set in, not the hot, panicked fear of the cottage. This was different. Cold, settled deep in his bones like winter frost, because he understood now what he hadn't understood before. It didn't matter what he said. It didn't matter what the truth was. He was poor, he was nobody, and somebody very powerful needed him to be guilty. Lord Edmund rode at the front of the column, always visible, his crimson robes like a wound against the gray landscape. Occasionally, he would turn in his saddle and look back at Theo. Just look. No expression. No acknowledgement. Just those dark eyes measuring something Theo couldn't name. On the third morning, the castle appeared on the horizon. Theo had never seen it before. Few people from Ashbrook had. The capital was 3 days' ride away, might as well have been 3 years for people who spent their entire lives within 5 miles of where they were born. But he'd heard stories. Everyone had. The castle of Valdres, seat of kings for 600 years. Stone walls thick enough to withstand a siege. Towers that scraped the clouds. The stories hadn't prepared him for the reality. It was massive, impossibly massive. The outer walls alone dwarfed any building Theo had ever seen. As they drew closer, he could make out soldiers on the battlements, tiny as ants from this distance. Banners hung from every tower, black cloth whipping in the wind, mourning colors, for the dead king. The king Theo was accused of helping to murder. His throat closed. He couldn't breathe. The world swam at the edges, black spots dancing across his vision. He was going to die here, in this place, far from home, far from everything he'd ever known. The wagon jerked to a stop. Rough hands grabbed him, hauling him down. His legs buckled when they hit the ground. He hadn't stood in 3 days. Blood rushed back into his feet, bringing agony with it. He gasped, stumbled, would have fallen if the guards hadn't held him upright. They were in a courtyard. Not the main one, Theo sensed. This was smaller, enclosed, shadowed by high walls. A servant's entrance, maybe, or a place where they brought prisoners they didn't want anyone to see. Move. A shove between his shoulder blades sent him staggering forward. They entered through a narrow door, then down. Down stone steps worn smooth by centuries of feet. Down into darkness barely touched by the torches set into wall brackets every 20 paces. The air grew colder, damper. It smelled of old stone and something else. Something that made Theo's stomach turn. Fear. This place smelled of fear. The dungeon. They were taking him to the dungeon. His legs gave out completely then. He fell, knees cracking against stone. The guards didn't let him stay down. They grabbed his arms and dragged him, his boots scraping uselessly against the floor. Doors passed on either side. Cell doors, iron-banded and ancient. From behind one came a sound that might have been crying or might have been something worse. They stopped at a cell near the end of the corridor. The guard with the keys took his time unlocking it, each click of the mechanism loud as a bell in the oppressive silence. The door swung open with a shriek of rusted hinges. They threw him inside. Theo hit the floor hard, his bound hands making it impossible to catch himself. His cheek slammed against cold stone. Blood filled his mouth, hot and metallic. He lay there, gasping, as the door clanged shut behind him. Footsteps retreated, faded, disappeared. Silence. Theo rolled onto his side, then his back. Every part of his body hurt. He stared up at the ceiling, barely visible in the weak light filtering through a grate high in the wall. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt different down here. heavier. He thought about his mother, about Mira, his father. Were they okay? Had Lord Edmund's men hurt them after he'd been taken? The not knowing was almost worse than his own situation. Almost. The sound of footsteps jerked him from his spiraling thoughts. Different footsteps, lighter, quicker. A single person, not guards. A figure appeared outside his cell door. Small, hooded. They held a candle that threw dancing shadows across the walls. Step back from the door. A woman's voice, young, urgent. Theo scrambled backward until his shoulders hit the far wall. The cell was tiny, barely 6 feet across. The figure unlocked the door with a key that appeared from beneath her cloak. She slipped inside, moving fast, and closed the door behind her. She pushed back her hood. Theo's heart stopped. It was her. The girl from the mountain pass. Princess Alara. She looked different now. Her hair was clean, pulled back in an elaborate braid. She wore a gown of deep blue silk that probably cost more than his family would earn in 10 lifetimes. But her eyes were the same. Wide, frightened, desperate. "You're alive." The words fell out of his mouth, stupid and obvious. "Yes." She knelt beside him and her hands went to the ropes at his wrists. Her fingers trembled as she worked at the knots. "And you're in terrible danger because of me. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." The ropes fell away. Theo's arms dropped to his sides, useless as dead things. The pain of blood returning to his hands made him bite back a scream. "I don't understand." He forced the words through gritted teeth. "They said you were missing. They said your father was murdered. They think I helped you. My uncle told them that." She cut him off, her voice sharp with something that might have been anger or might have been terror. "Lord Edmund. He's been spreading that story since the night my father died. That I ran away. That I had help. That whoever helped me must have been part of the plot. But that's not true." Theo stared at her. "Is it?" Her hands stilled on his wrists. She looked up at him, and in her eyes he saw something that made his blood run cold. "The truth doesn't matter anymore." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "My uncle wants the throne, and as long as I'm alive, he can't have it. So he's created a story where I'm either dead or a traitor. Either way, I'm gone. And anyone connected to me." She swallowed hard. "You were supposed to die in the mountains, Theo. There were men following me that night. My uncle's men. They were supposed to kill us both and make it look like an accident." The candle flickered. In the half-light, Alara's face looked haunted. "But you saved my life by knowing those trails, by being faster than they expected. So now my uncle needs a different story." She grabbed his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "He's going to put you on trial, in front of the entire court, and he's going to make you confess to helping me murder my father." Theo pulled his hand away from hers like she'd burned him. "Confess to murder?" His voice cracked. "I didn't murder anyone. I helped you cross a mountain pass. That's all I did." "I know." Alara's eyes glistened in the candlelight. "But my uncle doesn't care what actually happened. He needs you to say you were part of a conspiracy, that I paid you to help me escape after we killed my father together." The air in the cell felt too thick to breathe. Theo's mind raced, tripping over itself, trying to make sense of something that made no sense at all. "But you're here. You're alive. Can't you just tell them the truth? Tell them your uncle is lying?" Something flickered across her face. Shame, maybe, or fear, so deep it had hollowed her out from the inside. "I've tried." Her voice broke. "The morning after I returned to the castle, I went straight to the council. I told them everything. About the assassins in my father's chambers. About running for my life. About the men who chased me into the mountains." She pressed her palms against her eyes. "They didn't believe me." "How could they not believe you? You're the princess." "I'm a girl of 17 summers who shows up 3 days after her father's murder with a wild story about assassins and chases." She dropped her hands. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "My uncle has spent those 3 days very carefully building a different story. He has witnesses who say I argued with my father the night he died. He has servants who claim they saw me leaving the king's chambers covered in blood. He even has the captain of the guard swearing that I tried to flee the castle before anyone discovered the body. Theo's stomach twisted. That's all lies. Course it's lies. The words burst out of her, loud enough that they both froze, listening for footsteps. None came. She continued in a desperate whisper. But lies told by respected men sound more true than truth told by a hysterical girl. That's what Lord Blackwood called me in front of the entire council. Hysterical. She spat the word like poison. Who's Lord Blackwood? The captain of the guard, my uncle's closest ally. Her jaw tightened. He's the one who's been questioning everyone, building the case against both of us. Theo's head spun. This was too much. Too big. 3 days ago, his biggest concern had been whether the autumn harvest would be enough to pay their taxes. Now he was caught in some kind of conspiracy involving murdered kings and fake witnesses and powerful men who wanted him dead. Why are you here? The question came out harsher than he intended. If they think we're conspirators, why would you risk coming to see me? Alara met his eyes. Because you're going to die for helping me, and I couldn't let that happen without at least trying to warn you. She reached into her cloak and pulled out a small cloth bundle. I brought you food, real food, not the slop they'll feed you down here. And this. She pressed something cold and metal into his palm. Theo looked down. A ring. Gold, with a red stone that caught the candlelight. It looked expensive. Very expensive. That was my mother's. Ilara closed his fingers around it. She died when I was 8. My father gave it to me on my 16th birthday. It's the only thing of hers I have left. I can't take this. Theo tried to push it back toward her. You have to. She wouldn't let him. When they put you on trial, they're going to offer you a choice. Confess and die quickly, or refuse and die slowly. Very slowly. Her voice dropped so low he had to lean closer to hear. But there's a third option. If you can get word to Duke Hrothgar in the Northern Territories, he might help you. He was my father's most loyal friend. He doesn't believe my uncle's story, but he needs proof. What kind of proof? That ring has the royal seal on the inside of the band. Only 3 people in the kingdom have rings with that seal. My uncle, the high priest, and me. If Duke Hrothgar sees it, he'll know I gave it to you willingly. He'll know you're telling the truth about helping me. Theo stared at the ring. It felt impossibly heavy in his hand. How am I supposed to get word to a duke from a dungeon? Sell? I don't know. Ilara's voice cracked again. But you're clever. You knew those mountain trails better than trained soldiers. You got me across the pass when men with weapons and horses couldn't catch us. Maybe you can find a way. The desperation in her voice did something to him. Cut through the fear and confusion and found something else underneath. Anger, hot and clean and clarifying. Your uncle killed your father. It wasn't a question. She nodded. I can't prove it, but yes. I heard the assassins that night. They were speaking to someone, taking orders. I didn't see who. But the next morning, my uncle was the one who found the body. He was the one who raised the alarm. He was the one who started the rumor that I'd run away. Her hands clenched into fists. He planned everything perfectly, and now he's going to be king. Unless someone stops him. Unless someone stops him. She looked at him with something that might have been hope. But that someone can't be me. Half the court thinks I'm a murderer. The other half thinks I'm a foolish girl who got her father killed through carelessness. Either way, I have no power, no voice. Footsteps echoed in the distance. Ilara's head snapped toward the door. I have to go. I bribed the night guard, but his shift ends soon. She stood, pulling her hood back up. At the door, she paused. There's something else you should know. She didn't turn around. My uncle has been asking questions about your family, about your village. Her voice went flat. He's very thorough when he wants to be. Ice flooded Theo's veins. What does that mean? It means he's making sure there's no one left who might question his story. She finally looked back at him. In the shadows of her hood, her face was pale as death. Your sister, Mira, she works in the castle kitchens now. Did you know that? The world stopped. What? Your uncle sold her labor contract to the castle steward 2 days ago. To pay off a debt, apparently. Ilara's voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. She arrived yesterday. I saw her in the servants' quarters. Theo couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Mira, his baby sister, here, in this place, in the same castle as the man who wanted him dead. My uncle doesn't do anything without a reason. Ilara's words fell like stones into dark water. If your sister is here, it's because he wants leverage, insurance, in case you decide not to cooperate. The candle had burned down to almost nothing. In its dying light, Ilara looked like a ghost. I'm sorry. She pulled the door open. I'm so sorry I asked you for help that night. I didn't know it would cost you everything. She slipped out. The lock clicked back into place. Her footsteps faded into silence. Theo sat in the darkness, the ring burning in his palm like a brand. Mira was here, in the castle, within reach of Lord Edmund and his carefully laid plans, and Theo was locked in a cell, powerless, waiting for a trial that was really just an execution with extra steps. He thought about Duke Hrothgar in the Northern Territories, about getting word to someone who might actually help. It seemed impossible, ridiculous, a fantasy. But then again, 3 days ago, helping a crying girl cross a mountain pass had seemed like a simple act of kindness. Look where that had gotten him. The ring's edges dug into his skin. He turned it over in his hands, feeling for the seal Ilara had mentioned. His fingers found it, raised metal on the inside of the band, proof, evidence, a lifeline, or a death sentence if the wrong person found it. Somewhere above him, in the castle's great halls, Lord Edmund was probably sleeping soundly in the king's chambers, planning his coronation, erasing anyone who stood in his way. And Theo's 12-year-old sister was up there too, scrubbing floors, washing dishes, completely unaware that she'd just become a pawn in a game that could kill them both. The trial began on the 7th day of Theo's imprisonment. They came for him at dawn, not the regular guards who brought his daily ration of stale bread and brackish water, but 6 soldiers in ceremonial armor polished to a mirror shine. The kind of armor you wore when you wanted to make an impression, when you wanted everyone watching to understand that this was official, sanctioned, justice being served. They didn't speak as they hauled him up from the floor where he'd been sleeping. His legs had gone numb from the cold stone. He stumbled, and they caught him with practiced efficiency. Not gentle, but not brutal either. They had an audience to think about now. They'd brought him clean clothes. Not fine clothes, but clean. A simple brown tunic and breeches that actually fit. Someone had thought about optics. Can't have the accused looking too pathetic. That might generate sympathy. The walk from the dungeon to the great hall took forever, and no time at all. Theo's heart hammered so hard he thought it might crack his ribs. His mouth tasted like copper. He'd bitten his tongue at some point without realizing it. The great hall doors stood 20 feet high, carved oak banded with iron. They swung open silently, and the noise hit him like a physical wall. Hundreds of people, maybe 1,000, packed into every available space. The gallery above overflowed with nobles in their finest dress. The floor level held merchants, guild masters, minor lords, even some common folk, though they were relegated to the very back. Everyone who mattered in the kingdom had come to watch him die. Because that's what this was, not a trial, an execution with paperwork. They led him down the center aisle. Every eye tracked his movement. The whispers started immediately, a rustling sound like wind through dead leaves. Murderer, traitor, conspirator. The words didn't need to be loud. They soaked into his skin anyway. At the front of the hall sat the judge's bench. 5 men, all old, all wearing the black robes of the Royal Council. Theo recognized none of them, but the man seated at the center was impossible to miss. Lord Edmund. He wore a circlet of gold, not a crown, not yet, but close enough. His crimson robes had been replaced with black for mourning, but the gold embroidery caught the light from the massive chandeliers overhead. He looked every inch a king already. His eyes found Theo's across the hall, and he smiled. It was worse than hatred would have been. That smile said, "I've already won." Said this, "Is all just theater now?" Said you're already dead, boy, you just don't know it yet. They positioned Theo in the center of the hall, alone, exposed. A single chair had been placed there. They pushed him into it. The wood was hard against his spine. He couldn't stop his hands from shaking, so he gripped the armrests until his knuckles went white. Lord Edmund stood. The hall fell silent instantly. We are gathered here to seek truth. His voice carried effortlessly through the enormous space. He had the kind of voice that commanded attention without trying. 7 days ago, my brother, King Harold the Just, was murdered in his own chambers. His daughter, Princess Ilara, fled the castle that same night. And this boy, he gestured at Theo without looking at him, was found to have aided her escape. The murmur started again. Edmund raised his hand and they stopped. The question before this council is simple. Was this boy an innocent fool, manipulated by a desperate girl, or was he a conspirator and regicide? Edmund's voice hardened on the last word. Let us hear the evidence. What followed was a masterclass in character assassination. They brought forward witness after witness. A merchant who swore he'd seen Theo in the capital 3 weeks before the murder, though Theo had never left Ashbrook in his life. A stable hand who claimed Theo had asked questions about the castle's guard rotations. A tavern keeper who testified that Theo had been drinking with suspicious strangers. All lies. Every single word. But they were delivered with such confidence, such detail. The merchant described the clothes Theo had supposedly worn. The stable hand remembered the exact day and time of their conversation. The tavern keeper even named the specific ale Theo had ordered. Theo tried to object. I've never been to the capital. I don't know any of these people. Silence. Lord Blackwood, the captain of the guard, stepped forward. He was a mountain of a man, broad-shouldered and gray-bearded. His hand rested on his sword hilt. You will speak only when addressed directly. More witnesses came. A woman who claimed she'd seen Theo lurking near the castle walls. A farmer who swore Theo had stolen money from him months ago, establishing a pattern of criminal behavior. A priest who testified that Theo had stopped attending church services, suggesting a moral corruption. The lies piled up like stones, each one adding weight, building a wall around him, brick by brick. They were constructing a narrative so complete, so detailed, that even Theo started to doubt his own memories. Had he been to the capital? No, of course not. But these people sounded so certain, so specific. This was what power looked like, the ability to reshape reality itself. Then they brought out the physical evidence. A blood-stained knife. Lord Blackwood held it up for the entire hall to see. Found in the accused's family cottage during our investigation. The blood matches the king's. Theo's stomach dropped. That's not mine. I've never seen that before. Of course you haven't. Blackwood's voice dripped with contempt. Conspirators always deny the evidence. A leather pouch, supposedly containing gold coins. Payment for services rendered, hidden beneath the floorboards of the accused's home. We don't have floorboards. We have a dirt floor. Theo was on his feet now, though he didn't remember standing. You're lying. All of you are lying. The guards grabbed his arms, forcing him back into the chair. The hall erupted in noise, shouts, accusations. Someone threw something that clattered on the stone floor near his feet. Edmund raised his hand again. Silence fell like a hammer. Bring in the princess. His voice cut through the chaos. The side door opened. Ilara entered, flanked by 2 guards. She looked different than she had in the cell. Her face was painted white, her eyes rimmed with kohl that made her look older and harder. She wore a gown of deepest black mourning clothes, and her hair hung loose around her shoulders. She looked like a ghost, or a girl, playing at being a ghost. Their eyes met across the hall. He saw the apology in hers, saw the hopelessness. She'd tried to warn him. Now she had to play her part. Edmund's voice softened as he addressed her. Princess Ilara, I know this is difficult, but we must know the truth. Did this boy help you flee the castle the night your father died? Ilara's throat worked. Her hands clenched at her sides. Yes. The hall exploded. Edmund let it go on for a moment before calling for order. And did you pay him to help you? Her voice was barely audible. Yes. Speak up, please. The council must hear your testimony clearly. She raised her chin, met Theo's eyes again, and he saw what it cost her to say the next words. Yes, I paid him. I paid him to help me escape after... Her voice broke. After I killed my father. The world stopped spinning. Everything went silent and cold and far away. This was it, the moment Edmund had been building toward. The princess, confessing to patricide. The boy, exposed as her accomplice. Everything wrapped up neatly. No loose ends, except Alara wasn't done talking. I killed my father, she continued, her voice growing stronger, because he discovered what my uncle was planning. He found proof that Lord Edmund had been embezzling from the royal treasury, that he'd been meeting with enemy lords, that he was planning a coup. The words came faster, now tumbling over each other. My father confronted him that night. They argued, and when my uncle realized he'd been caught, he had his men kill my father and frame me for it. The hall erupted into absolute chaos. People were shouting, standing, pointing. The guards moved toward Alara, but Edmund held up his hand, stopping them. His face had gone very still, very cold. Take her to her chambers. His voice was soft, deadly. The princess is clearly unwell, overcome with grief. She doesn't know what she's saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. Alara's voice rose above the din. You killed him. You killed my father, and you're going to kill me too, and this boy, and anyone else who stands in your way. They dragged Alara from the hall screaming. Her voice echoed off the stone walls, raw and desperate, until the heavy doors slammed shut and swallowed the sound whole. The silence that followed felt thick enough to choke on. 1,000 people holding their breath at once. Theo couldn't move, couldn't think. She'd just destroyed herself trying to save him. Accused the most powerful man in the kingdom of murder in front of everyone who mattered. It was suicide, brave and stupid and completely, utterly suicidal. Lord Edmund remained standing, his face a mask of sorrowful concern. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of profound sadness. You see now what we are dealing with. He addressed the crowd like a father explaining a difficult truth to his children. The princess has been driven mad by grief, by guilt. She cannot accept what she has done, so she lashes out, making wild accusations against those trying to help her. He pressed his hand to his chest. Against her own family. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. Theo watched it happen in real time. Watched people who'd just heard Alara's accusation dismiss it. Rationalize it away. Because believing her meant accepting that their entire world was built on lies. That the man about to become their king was a murderer. It was easier to believe a girl had gone mad. My lords of the council. Edmund turned to the judges. I move that we conclude these proceedings. The evidence is clear. The princess has confessed, though her mind is too broken to understand what she's saying. And this boy, he finally looked at Theo, was her tool, perhaps manipulated, perhaps complicit. Either way, the law is clear. The oldest judge, a man with skin like parchment and eyes clouded with age, cleared his throat. The law requires a confession from the accused. Of course. Edmund's smile was patient, understanding. Boy, tell us the truth now. Did you help the princess flee the castle? Theo's mouth had gone completely dry. Every eye in the hall fixed on him, waiting. This was the moment. Confess and maybe they'd make it quick. Refuse and face whatever horrors they had prepared for the uncooperative. He thought about Mira. Somewhere in this castle, within Edmund's reach. I helped a girl cross a mountain pass. His voice came out steady somehow. I didn't know she was the princess. I didn't know about any murder. I was just trying to help someone who looked scared. Did she pay you? Theo hesitated. The truth was complicated. She hadn't paid him, but she'd offered. He'd refused. Would that distinction matter to anyone here? She offered. He chose his words carefully. I said no. But you accepted something from her. Edmund's voice sharpened. Didn't you? In your cell. 4 nights ago. Ice flooded Theo's veins. How did he know? Had someone seen Alara's visit? Had she been followed? Edmund gestured to Lord Blackwood. The captain stepped forward, holding something that caught the light. The ring. Alara's mother's ring. The one with the royal seal. They'd searched his cell. Of course they had. He'd hidden it in a crack in the wall, wrapped in cloth. But they'd found it anyway. They'd probably been watching the whole time, waiting to see what he'd do with it. This ring belonged to the late queen. Edmund's voice filled the hall. It was given to Princess Alara on her 16th birthday, and now we find it in the possession of a common farm boy who claims he barely knew her. He paused, letting the implication sink in. Tell me, boy, how did you come by the queen's ring? The trap closed around him. If he said Alara gave it to him, it proved they'd been in contact. Proved she trusted him. Proved conspiracy. If he said he stole it, he was a thief and a liar. There was no right answer. She gave it to me. The words felt like signing his own death warrant. In the cell, she wanted me to have proof that I was telling the truth, that I'd really helped her. Proof. Edmund repeated the words slowly. Or payment. This ring is worth more than your entire village. More than your family could earn in a lifetime. He turned to the council. The princess gives a priceless heirloom to a stranger who helped her flee. Does this sound like the action of an innocent girl? Or the action of someone buying silence? I wasn't buying his silence. Alara's voice cut through from somewhere above. Theo's head snapped up. She was in the gallery, being held by 2 guards, her face pressed against the railing. They must have been taking her to her chambers when she broke away. I gave him that ring because he's the only honest person in this entire cursed castle. Her voice cracked. Because he helped me when he had nothing to gain. Because unlike the, rest of you, he actually cares about truth more than power. Edmund's jaw tightened. Remove her. Now. But Alara wasn't done. She was fighting the guards, her voice rising to a scream. Tell them about the ledgers, the ones my father found. Tell them about the midnight meetings with Lord Voss. Tell them about the poison you bought from the apothecary in the lower city. The guards finally got her under control, dragging her backward. Her voice faded as they pulled her away, still shouting. Accusations. The hall erupted again. This time the noise was different, uncertain. Some people were whispering behind their hands, exchanging glances. Alara's accusations were too specific, too detailed. They didn't sound like the ravings of a mad girl. They sounded like the truth. Edmund saw it too, saw the doubt spreading like cracks in ice. His face remained calm, but his eyes had gone very cold. Clearly the princess is more disturbed than we realized. His voice carried an edge now. She speaks of things that never happened, ledgers that don't exist, meetings that never occurred. This is what grief does to a young mind. It creates elaborate fantasies to escape unbearable reality. What if she's telling the truth? The voice came from the back of the hall, an old man, one of the minor nobles. What if we're condemning innocence based on manufactured evidence? The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Edmund's attention swiveled to the speaker like a snake finding its prey. Are you questioning this council's authority, Lord Pembroke? The old man faltered. His courage had taken him as far as speaking up. Now, under Edmund's direct gaze, it failed him. No, my lord, I simply thought... You thought what? That we haven't investigated thoroughly? That we've rushed to judgment? Edmund's voice was silk over steel. Perhaps you'd like to examine the evidence yourself, review the witness testimonies, question the accused. Lord Pembroke shrank back. No, my lord. I thought not. Edmund turned back to the council. Gentlemen, we have heard testimony. We have seen evidence. We have witnessed the princess's confession, disturbing as it was. I call for a verdict. The 5 judges conferred in whispers. It took less than a minute. They'd already decided before the trial began. Everyone knew it. The eldest judge stood. We find the accused, Theo of Ashbrook, guilty of conspiracy to commit regicide, and we find Princess Alara guilty of patricide. His voice wavered slightly. The sentence for both is death. The hall exploded into noise. Theo couldn't hear it anymore. Everything had gone distant and muffled, like he was underwater. Death. The word echoed in his skull. Death, death, death. However, the judge wasn't finished. Given the princess's youth and apparent mental instability, we recommend mercy. She will be confined to the Tower Monastery for the remainder of her days, to pray for her soul and her father's forgiveness. A living death, locked away where she could never threaten Edmund's claim to the throne, never speak his secrets, never be heard from again. As for the boy, the judge looked at Theo. Was that pity in his eyes? The execution will be carried out at dawn, 3 days hence. 3 days, 72 hours, 4,320 minutes. Then nothing. Edmund stood, radiating satisfaction barely concealed as sorrow. This council is adjourned. May God have mercy on the guilty. The guards grabbed Theo's arms, hauling him to his feet. The crowd pressed in, shouting questions, hurling insults. Someone spat. It hit his cheek, warm and viscous. He didn't wipe it away. They dragged him back through the hall, back down the corridors, back to the dungeon. The same cell, the same cold stone, but now it had an expiration date. 3 days. The door slammed shut. The lock clicked. Footsteps faded. Theo sat in the darkness and thought about his sister, about his parents, about Alara, locked in some tower, alive but buried. About Duke Hrothgar in the north, who might have helped if only he'd known. About all the ways this could have gone differently. The voice came in the darkness of his second night. Don't make a sound. Theo jerked awake, his heart slamming against his ribs. A figure crouched beside him, barely visible in the thin moonlight filtering through the grate. Small, hooded. For one wild moment he thought it was Alara again, but the voice was wrong. Younger, rougher. Mira? His whisper cracked. The figure pushed back her hood. Even in the dimness he recognized his sister's face. Thinner than he remembered. Older somehow, though only 10 days had passed since he'd last seen her. Her eyes held something that made his chest ache. Fear, yes, but also a hardness that hadn't been there before. What are you doing here? His hands found her shoulders, gripping too tight. You shouldn't be here. If they catch you, they won't. Her voice was steady. Too steady. For a 12-year-old girl sneaking into a dungeon at night. I work in the kitchens now. I know the guard rotations. I know which ones drink on duty. I know how to move through this castle without being seen. 10 days. She'd learned all that in 10 days. Mira, listen to me. He pulled her closer, needing her to understand. You have to leave. Get out of the castle. Go home. This place, these people, they're dangerous. I know. Something flickered in her eyes. I've seen things, Theo. Heard. Things. The servants talk when they think we're not listening. She reached into her apron and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. I brought you food. Real food. And this. She unwrapped the cloth. Inside was a small knife. Not a weapon, more of a tool. The kind used for peeling vegetables in the kitchen. But sharp. Sharp enough. What am I supposed to do with that? The words came out harsher than he intended. Whatever you need to. Her jaw set in a way that reminded him painfully of, their mother. They're going to kill you in 2 days. Everyone knows it. The whole castle is talking about the execution, about how Lord Edmund wants it public, in the square, so everyone can see what happens to traitors. Theo's stomach twisted. He'd been trying not to think about the details, about how it would happen. Now his mind conjured images he couldn't unsee. The block, the axe, the crowd watching. I can't escape, Mira, even with a knife. There are guards everywhere. The doors are locked. The walls are too high. I'm not asking you to escape. Her voice dropped even lower. I'm asking you to survive long enough for help to come. What help? There is no help. There might be. She glanced toward the cell door, listening. Satisfied they were still alone, she continued. There's a man. He came to the castle yesterday. A lord from the north. Duke Hrothgar. Theo's breath caught. Hrothgar. The name Alara had mentioned. The king's loyal friend. He's been asking questions. Mira's words came faster now, urgent. About the trial. About the evidence. About Lord Edmund's story. The servants say he doesn't believe it. That he knew the old king too well. Knew the princess too well. Hope flared in Theo's chest, painful and dangerous. Did he say anything? Is he going to help? I don't know. Mira's face twisted with frustration. He meets with Lord Edmund and the council behind closed doors. But last night I was serving wine at dinner and I heard him arguing with the captain of the guard. He said the evidence was too convenient, that the witnesses were too rehearsed, that innocent people were being murdered to serve someone's ambition. And what did Blackwood say? He told Duke Hrothgar to be careful what he accused men of. Mira's hand tightened on the knife. Said unfortunate things happen to people who question the council's authority. It was a threat, Theo. Right there in the dining hall. Theo's mind raced. Hrothgar was here, asking questions, but clearly not powerful enough to stop the execution outright. If he was, Theo would already be free. There's something else. Mira pulled out a small piece of parchment, folded tight. I stole this from Lord Edmund's chambers this morning. You what? Theo's voice rose before he could stop it. He forced it back to a whisper. Are you insane? If anyone had caught you. But they didn't. She thrust the parchment at him. Read it. Theo unfolded it with shaking hands. The writing was cramped. Hurried, hard to make out in the poor light, but certain words jumped out at him. Gold shipment, northern border, week before the murder, 5,000 crowns, signed with initials. E.V. E.V. Theo looked up. Edmund Valdris. Keep reading. More lines, more numbers, payment for services rendered, names he didn't recognize, and at the bottom, one line that made his blood run cold. Final payment upon confirmation of death. King and heir. He planned to kill them both. The words felt like ash in his mouth. The king and Alara. This is proof. Actual proof. But it's not enough. Mira's voice cracked for the first time. I heard Duke Hrothgar talking to his advisor. He said he needs more than a stolen letter. He needs witnesses. Someone who saw something. Someone whose testimony can't be dismissed. There's no one. Everyone who might have seen anything is either dead or working for Edmund. Mira's eyes met his. In them, he saw a terrible determination. Not everyone. His stomach dropped. No. Whatever you're thinking, no. I work in the kitchens. Her words came steady and cold. I serve food to the council members, to Lord Edmund himself. I'm invisible to them, just another servant girl. They talk in front of me like I'm furniture. Mira, you're 12 years old. I'm 12 years old and I'm going to lose my brother if I don't do something. Her voice broke completely now. Tears streamed down her face, but her expression remained fierce. I can't just watch them. Kill you? I can't. Theo pulled her into his arms. She was shaking. Or maybe he was. Hard to tell. For a moment, they just held each other. Two kids from Ashbrook who'd stumbled into something so far beyond them, it might as well have been another world. Listen to me. Theo pulled back, gripping her shoulders again. You need to find Duke Hrothgar. Give him this letter. Tell him everything you told me. And then you need to leave this castle. Promise me. I'm not leaving without you. Mira. I'm not. Her jaw set again. Either we both get out or neither of us does. The stubborn set of her face told him arguing was useless. She'd inherited that from their father. Once decided, there was no moving her. Fine. The word tasted like defeat. But you have to be careful. Edmund is dangerous. More dangerous than you know. I know exactly how dangerous he is. Something in her voice made him look at her closer. I've seen what he does to people who cross him. There was a girl in the kitchens, older than me. She said something to one of the guards, made a joke about Lord Edmund. Next morning they found her at the bottom of the stairs, broken neck. Everyone said it was an accident. The casual way she said it chilled him to the bone. 10 days. In 10 days, his baby sister had learned to speak about murder like it was weather. There's something you should know. Mira reached into her apron again. This time, she pulled out something that made Theo's heart stop. A piece of fabric, blue silk, torn and stained with something dark. I found this in the fireplace in Lord Edmund's chambers. He tried to burn it, but it didn't catch completely. I pulled it out when no one was looking. She turned it over. Embroidered on the corner in gold thread was a crest. The royal crest. This is from the king's chambers, from the night he died. Theo stared at the fabric, at the dark stains that could only be blood, at the crest that marked it as belonging to the royal household. If Edmund tried to burn this, his mind worked through the implications. It means he was there, in the king's chambers, that night. It means he's the one who killed him. Mira's voice was flat, final. And now we can prove it. Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Heavy, multiple pairs. Mira's head snapped toward the door. I have to go. She shoved the fabric and the letter into his hands. Hide these. Don't let anyone find them. Wait, how do I... But she was already at the door, hood up, slipping into the shadows. The lock clicked. She was gone. Theo was left holding the evidence that could destroy Lord Edmund, or get them all killed. The footsteps outside grew closer, stopped at his door. The key turned in the lock, and Theo barely had time to shove the fabric and letter into a crack between the stones before the door swung open. But it wasn't guards. Duke Hrothgar stood in the doorway, lamplight casting his face in sharp relief. He was older than Theo expected, maybe 50. Winters, with silver threading through dark hair and lines carved deep around his eyes. He wore traveling clothes, dusty from the road, and carried himself with the kind of authority that didn't need armor or ceremony to be felt. Behind him stood a single guard, young, nervous. His hand kept drifting to his sword hilt, like he wasn't sure if he should be here. Leave us. Hrothgar's voice was quiet but absolute. The guard hesitated. My lord, I was told no one is to speak with the prisoner without Lord Edmund's permission, and I am telling you to wait outside. Hrothgar turned to look at him. Unless you'd like to explain to your captain why you prevented a duke from conducting his own investigation. The guard's face went pale. He backed out, pulling the door closed but not locking it. His footsteps retreated down the corridor. Hrothgar waited until silence settled before speaking again. You have about 10 minutes before that boy runs to tell Blackwood I'm here. So listen carefully, and don't waste time with questions. He moved closer, lamplight throwing shadows across the cell walls. I knew King Harold for 30 years. I taught his daughter to ride when she was 6 years old. And I know, with absolute certainty, that neither of them would ever conspire to hurt the other. Theo's throat tightened. Then why aren't you stopping this? Because I can't. Frustration cracked through Hrothgar's controlled exterior. Edmund has spent years building alliances. Half the council is in his pocket. The other half is too afraid to stand against him. And now he has witnesses, evidence, a confession from the princess herself. On paper, his case is airtight. It's all fabricated. I know that. Hrothgar's jaw clenched. But knowing and proving are different things. I've been reviewing the trial records. Every witness has a history with Edmund. Every piece of evidence was found by his men. But when I point this out, I'm told I'm letting friendship cloud my judgment. That I can't accept the truth because it's too painful. So you're just going to let them kill me? The words came out bitter. No. Hrothgar's eyes locked onto his. I'm going to ask you one question, and your answer will determine whether you die in 2 days or whether I risk everything I have to save you. He leaned closer. Did Princess Alara give you anything? Anything that might prove Edmund is lying? Theo's heart hammered. The ring was gone, confiscated. But Mira had brought him something. Better. 2 things that could destroy Edmund completely. If he could trust this man. Why should I believe you? Theo's voice shook. How do I know you're not working for Edmund? That this isn't just another trap? You don't. Hrothgar's answer was blunt. You have to make a choice based on incomplete information, just like I do. He straightened. But consider this. If I worked for Edmund, you'd already be dead. He doesn't need more evidence against you. He already has everything he needs. So, why would I be here risking his suspicion unless I was genuinely trying to help? The logic was sound, but logic and truth weren't always the same thing. Theo thought about Mira, about the risks she'd taken, about the fabric and letter hidden in the wall behind him. If he gave them to the wrong person, his sister would die. He would die. Elara would spend the rest of her life locked in a tower. But if he said nothing, he died anyway. And Edmund won. The princess visited me. The words felt like jumping off a cliff. After the trial, she told me Edmund killed her father, that he'd been planning it for months. Hrothgar's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Can you prove that? She gave me her mother's ring. To show Duke Hrothgar, specifically. She said you were the king's most loyal friend, that you'd help if you had proof. The ring with the royal seal. Hrothgar nodded slowly. I heard they found it in your cell. Edmund claims it proves you and Elara were conspirators. Where is it now? Confiscated. Locked away somewhere as evidence. Theo swallowed hard. But there's something else. He told Hrothgar about Mira, about the letter from Edmund's chambers, about the blood-stained fabric with the royal crest. With each word, Hrothgar's expression grew harder, more dangerous. Your sister stole documents from Edmund's private chambers? His voice was very quiet. She's 12 years old and terrified. Theo's hands clenched into fists. She's trying to save her brother. Don't you dare judge her for that. I'm not judging her. I'm terrified for her. Hrothgar ran a hand through his hair. If Edmund finds out what she's done, he'll kill her, slowly. He can't afford loose ends. Then get her out. Please, I don't care what happens to me. Just get my sister out of this castle. Hrothgar studied him for a long moment. Show me what she brought you. Theo hesitated one more heartbeat. Then he turned and pulled the fabric and letter from their hiding place. His hands shook as he handed them over. Hrothgar unfolded the letter first. His eyes moved rapidly across the cramped writing. His face went very still, very cold. When he looked up, his expression was murderous. This is Edmund's handwriting. I've seen it 1,000 times. He refolded the letter with careful precision. This alone would be enough to arrest him, to call for an investigation. Then do it. Call for an investigation. Stop the execution. It's not that simple. Hrothgar's voice was tight. This letter was stolen. Any magistrate Edmund controls, which is most of them, will rule it inadmissible. Fruit of a poisoned tree. And then Edmund will know we have it. He'll disappear the other evidence. Kill anyone who might corroborate it. So what do we do? Hrothgar examined the fabric next. The blue silk, the bloodstains, the royal crest embroidered in gold. His hands tightened on it until his knuckles went white. This was from Harold's chambers. I recognize the weave. The queen had it specially made from silk imported from the east. His voice cracked. Edmund tried to burn it, which means he knows it places him at the scene. Can you use it? Maybe. Hrothgar's mind was clearly racing, calculating angles, considering options. If I can get the royal physician to examine it, if the blood matches the king's, if I can convince enough council members to demand answers. He looked at Theo. But I need time, at least a week, maybe 2. I have 2 days. I know. Hrothgar's jaw set. Which is why we're going to have to do something extremely dangerous and probably insane. Before Theo could ask what, footsteps thundered in the corridor outside. Multiple pairs. Running. The door burst open and Lord Blackwood filled the doorway, 6 guards behind him. Duke Hrothgar. Blackwood's voice dripped with false courtesy. I'm afraid I must ask you to leave. Lord Edmund has expressly forbidden unsupervised contact with the prisoner. I'm conducting my own investigation. Hrothgar's tone was ice. As is my right as a member of the High Council, your investigation can wait until morning. Blackwood stepped into the cell. His hand rested on his sword hilt. "Right now you need to come with me. Lord Edmund wishes to speak with you about your concerns regarding the trial." It wasn't a request. It was an arrest disguised as an invitation. Hrothgar's eyes met Theo's for just a moment. In them, Theo saw a message. "Trust me. Hold on. Don't give up." Then Hrothgar turned to Blackwood with a cold smile. "Of course. I'd be delighted to discuss my concerns with Lord Edmund. Perhaps he can explain why the evidence in this case is so remarkably convenient. Perhaps he can." Blackwood's smile matched Hrothgar's, two predators circling each other. "This way, my lord." Hrothgar walked out without looking back. The guards followed. The door slammed shut. The lock clicked. Theo was alone again. But something had changed. For the first time since this nightmare began, he wasn't completely hopeless. Someone believed him. Someone powerful. Someone who might actually be able to help, if he survived long enough. He pressed his back against the cold stone and tried to calculate how many hours he had left. 48, maybe less. 48 hours to either be saved or die trying. Somewhere in the castle, Mira was moving through the kitchens, invisible, gathering information, taking risks that could get her killed. Somewhere above, Alara sat, in her tower prison, locked away, silenced. And somewhere in the royal chambers, Edmund was planning his coronation, preparing to take a throne built on murder and lies. The night stretched ahead, endless and suffocating. Theo closed his eyes and tried not to think about the axe, about the block, about the crowd that would gather to watch him die. Dawn came too fast. They dragged Theo from his cell while the sky was still more gray than blue. No ceremony this time, no clean clothes, just rough hands and rougher rope binding his wrists behind his back. The guards' faces were blank, professional. They'd done this before. The walk through the castle corridors felt like moving through a dream, or a nightmare. Hard to tell the difference anymore. Servants pressed themselves against walls as the procession passed, eyes down, not wanting to be associated with the condemned. Theo's legs moved automatically, one foot in front of the other, toward the courtyard, toward the block, toward the end. The execution square was already packed. Hundreds of people, maybe thousands, pressed shoulder to shoulder. The smell hit him first. Unwashed bodies, spoiled food, excitement. Because that's what this was to them. Entertainment. A story they'd tell their children, the day they watched the king killer die. The scaffold stood at the center, fresh wood pale against the gray stone. Someone had built it new just for this. The block was dark oak, smooth from use. How many necks had rested there? How many lives had ended in this exact spot? Don't think about it. Don't think about anything. But his mind wouldn't stop. It raced, frantic, searching for escape where there was none. He thought about his parents. Were they in the crowd somewhere? Or had they been forbidden to come? He thought about Mira. Please let her be safe. Please let Hrothgar have gotten her out. He thought about Alara in her tower. Could she see the square from her window? Was she watching? They hauled him up the scaffold. Steps. His legs nearly gave out on the third step. The guards caught him, kept him upright. Couldn't have the prisoner collapsing. Bad optics. The crowd roared, not cheering exactly, just noise. A wall of sound that pressed against his skull. He couldn't make out individual words. Didn't want to. Lord Edmund stood at the edge of the scaffold, resplendent in black and gold. Morning colors, but the gold made sure everyone remembered who was about to be king. His face showed appropriate solemnity. Grief for the necessity of this. Justice being served. It was a performance. All of it. And Theo was the sacrifice that made the story complete. People of Valdris. Edmund's voice cut through the noise. The crowd settled into expectant silence. We are gathered to witness justice. This boy, Theo of Ashbrook, has been found guilty of conspiracy to commit regicide, of aiding Princess Alara in the murder of our beloved King Harold. The crowd murmured, not quite agreement, Not quite protest, just witness. The law is clear. Edmund continued. The penalty is death. But before sentence is carried out, the condemned may speak. A final mercy granted to all, regardless of their crimes. He turned to Theo. Have you anything to say? This was it. His last chance, last moment, last breath before the axe fell. Theo's mouth opened. What came out surprised even him. I didn't kill anyone. His voice cracked but carried. I helped a scared girl cross a mountain. That's all. That's the truth. The truth. Edmund's smile was knife-thin. Yes. Let's talk about truth. He pulled a document from his robes, unfolded it with theatrical precision. This is a confession, signed by one of my brother's personal guards, a man named Willem. He confessed 3 days ago to accepting bribes from foreign agents, to allowing unauthorized persons into the king's chambers the night of the murder. Theo's heart stuttered. What was happening? Edmund's voice hardened. Willem also confessed to accepting payment from me, to following my orders, to helping me murder my own brother. The crowd exploded. Shouts, screams, chaos. The guards on the scaffold shifted, hands moving to weapons. But Edmund raised his hand and somehow, impossibly, silence fell again. You hear correctly. Edmund's face showed no emotion now. Just cold fact. I am guilty. I orchestrated my brother's death. I framed his daughter. And I framed this innocent boy. He looked at Theo. I did this because I believed the kingdom needed stronger leadership. Because I thought Harold was weak. Because I wanted power. Theo couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. This wasn't possible. People like Edmund didn't confess. They didn't just admit to everything in front of thousands of witnesses, unless they had no choice. Movement at the edge of the square caught his eye. Duke Hrothgar, mounted on horseback, surrounded by at least 50 armed men. His men, loyal to him, not to Edmund. And behind them, more soldiers, hundreds of them. Bearing the crest of the northern territories, Hrothgar had brought an army. Last night, Edmund continued, his voice steady despite the death sentence he was pronouncing on himself. Duke Hrothgar presented evidence to the council, irrefutable evidence of my crimes, letters in my own hand, testimony from witnesses I thought I'd silenced, and a piece of fabric from my brother's chambers, stained with his blood, bearing traces of the poison I used. The crowd was screaming now, howling for Edmund's blood. The guards around the scaffold drew their weapons but didn't know who to point them at. Their commander was confessing to murder. Hrothgar's army surrounded the square. Nothing in their training had prepared them for this. Edmund's eyes found Theo's, and in them, for just a moment, Theo saw something that might have been respect, or acknowledgement, or just resignation. I am guilty. Edmund's voice rose above the chaos, and I accept the punishment prescribed by law. He turned to the executioner. The block is ready, but the neck that should rest upon it is mine, not this boy's. No. Lord Blackwood appeared at the scaffold's edge, sword drawn. My lord, you don't know what you're saying. Duke Hrothgar has threatened you, coerced you. This confession is invalid. The confession is voluntary. Hrothgar's voice carried across the square. He urged his horse forward. And it's corroborated by 3 members of your own guard, Captain. Men who've grown tired of serving a murderer, who've agreed to testify in exchange for clemency. Blackwood's face went white. You're lying. Am I? Hrothgar gestured. 3 guards stepped forward from the crowd. Young men, terrified but determined. These men watched you plant evidence in the boy's cottage, watched you rehearse false witnesses. One of them was with you when you murdered that kitchen girl who joked about Lord Edmund. Remember her? The one whose accident was so convenient? Blackwood lunged. His sword came up, aimed at Hrothgar's chest, but he never completed the strike. An arrow sprouted from his shoulder. He screamed, stumbled, fell from the scaffold. Hrothgar's archers had moved into position around the square. Everything happened at once then. Edmund's guards threw down their weapons. Hrothgar's men swarmed the scaffold. Hands grabbed Theo, cut the ropes binding his wrists. Someone was shouting his name. "Theo!" Mira. His sister crashed into him, nearly knocking him off his feet. She was crying, or laughing, maybe both. Her arms wrapped around him so tight he couldn't breathe. He didn't care. "You're alive." She said it over and over. "You're alive. You're alive. I'm alive." The words felt impossible. He'd been so certain, so absolutely certain this was the end. But he was alive. Hrothgar dismounted, moving through the chaos with calm authority. He reached the scaffold and bowed to Edmund. "My lord, I wish this could have ended differently." "Do you?" Edmund's smile was bitter. "I don't. I'm tired, Hrothgar. So very tired." He looked out at the crowd, at the people who'd loved him once, who'd trusted him. "I wanted to be a good king. I thought Harold was failing them. I thought I could do better. But all I did was prove I was exactly what I accused him of being. Weak, selfish, unworthy. That's for history to judge." Hrothgar's voice was gentle. "Not for me." They led Edmund away. Not roughly, almost respectfully. He went without resistance, his head high, his face calm. A king. Walking to his execution with more dignity than he'd shown his entire reign. The crowd parted as another figure pushed through. Alara. She'd been freed from her tower. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying, but she moved with purpose. She climbed the scaffold and stood before Theo. "I'm sorry." Her voice shook. "I'm so sorry. You helped me and I nearly got you killed. I nearly got your sister killed. Stop." Theo found his voice finally. "You saved me. That night in the cell. The ring. The warning. You tried to protect me even when it meant destroying yourself. I didn't protect you. Duke Hrothgar protected you, and your sister. She's the real hero." Alara turned to Mira. "You broke into my uncle's chambers, stole evidence that could have gotten you executed. You're braver than any knight I've ever known." Mira's face flushed. "I just didn't want my brother to die. You did more than that." Hrothgar had returned. "You exposed a conspiracy that would have destroyed this kingdom. You're 12 years old and you brought down a would-be tyrant." The sun had risen fully now. Golden light spilled across the square, across the crowd, across the faces of people who'd come to watch death and instead witnessed something else. Justice, real justice, messy and complicated and imperfect, but real. Theo looked at his sister, at the princess who'd asked him for help, at the duke who'd risked everything to save them, at the crowd of ordinary people who'd simply witnessed. Truth triumph over power. What happens now? His voice sounded strange to his own ears. Alara's jaw set. "Now we rebuild. We find every person my uncle corrupted, every lie he told, every life he damaged, and we try to make it right. That could take years. Then it takes years." She met his eyes. "Will you help me? You and Mira? I don't trust anyone in this castle, but I trust you. I trust people who do the right thing even when it costs them everything." Theo thought about his family's cottage, about Ashbrook, about the simple life he'd had before all this. He could go back. Hrothgar had offered full pardon, compensation for his suffering, a chance to pretend none of this had ever happened. But he looked at Mira's face, at the hardness in her eyes that hadn't been there before, at the person she'd become in these terrible days, and he knew they could never really go back. Yes, the word felt like choosing a path he couldn't see the end of. "We'll help." Alara smiled. It transformed her face, made her look young again, human again. "Then let's begin." Theo's story forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Doing the right thing doesn't always protect you. Sometimes kindness makes you vulnerable. Sometimes helping a stranger costs you everything. But here's the question that haunts me, and maybe it haunts you too. If you saw someone desperate, terrified, begging for help, Would you turn away because it might be dangerous? Would you protect yourself and let them suffer? Or would you do what Theo did, knowing it could destroy your life? We'd all like to believe we'd be heroes, that we'd stand up to corruption, fight injustice, risk everything for truth. But when the powerful write the story, when lies sound more convincing than truth, when speaking up means watching your loved ones suffer, heroism becomes infinitely more complicated. What strikes me most about this story isn't the conspiracy or the trial, or even the last-minute rescue. It's Mira, a 12-year-old girl who refused to accept that good people should die to serve evil men's ambitions. She didn't have power or influence or training. She just had love for her brother and a stubborn belief that truth matters. And somehow, impossibly, that was enough. Maybe that's the real lesson here. That ordinary people, doing extraordinary things out of love, can topple empires built on lies. That courage isn't the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear silence you. That sometimes the most powerful weapon against injustice is simply refusing to look away. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you that one person's choice can change everything, then share it. Let it reach someone who needs to hear that truth still matters, that courage still counts, that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Hit that like button, follow for more stories that challenge and inspire, and leave a comment telling me what you would have done in Theo's place. Would you have helped the girl on the mountain? Would you have stayed silent to protect yourself? Or would you have fought, even knowing you might lose everything? I want to know, because your answer says everything about the world we're building together.